the negotiators, and later a premier of one of the provinces which arguably did very well comparatively. To start off by asking Dr. Posa just to tell us briefly about himself, leading up to the talks about talks. So in South Africa, he will tell you the steps. We have talks about talks, which included what happened in Dakar in '87, but also pre-1994 in the interim from 1990 to 1994. Dr. Posa?
Thank you, Dr. Moloi. He's asking me to read to you my memoirs. I can't, there's no time. But I was born in South Africa, a young guy, very active in politics from a young age. And of course, there was no room for neutrality against apartheid. We had to take a stand against apartheid. And it came with a price or prices to us who were active. I'm summarizing a long story because I was involved in the political and military underground of the ANC in the country before I went to exile, which was very dangerous because it meant that we had to receive the arms inside the country and distribute the arms in the country and make sure the arms are used in the country to fight. So I'm confessing that without shame. We did that, it was necessary. But that threw me out into exile, and I ended up in Mozambique and then East Germany. Many people don't know there was a country called East Germany when there was a wall dividing the two Germanys. And I was in East Germany where I trained politically and militarily and came back. And I was asked to be a commander of our forces in Mozambique facing the country. Another story for another book. And then, of course, the time came when Mandela was released. And I was not aware that Mandela was following my footsteps as a young lawyer fighting for human rights, because I was fighting for human rights. I did some of the most prominent cases along the levels of, after the big inquest, I did the next inquest, political inquest. I mean, very big cases. And he said to Tambo, I want that young lawyer who ran away to be part of my negotiating team. You know, so I was fetched from a battlefield to go and meet Mandela in Lusaka. It was very overwhelming to meet this man who you only know on paper. But I sat there, he said, boy, I told you earlier, I want you to come home to be part of my team to start negotiations. What do you mean? These people are looking for me. I must come home. They're going to arrest me. Easy. You're going to come home, they won't arrest you. You and Maduna and Zuma will come home. So we're the first three to go home to start negotiations. It was very scary. Because when I arrived home, I flew via Botswana. And I said to myself, I think I'm a guinea pig here. But I had to do it for the sake of my people. So I flew from Botswana to South Africa. And as I was flying into South Africa, it was so scary. I said, I don't know what's going to happen to me. I'll tell you the story. It's a human story. And of course, it shows the lack of trust between us. I assumed they'll arrest me, they'll kill me. When the plane landed, a tall man walked into the plane. No one was allowed to leave the plane. They said they must sit there. This guy walks, he says to me, are you Matthew? I kept quiet. He says, are you Freddy? Freddy was my nom de guerre. I said, yes, I'm Freddy. So I realized he's been briefed. He said, we'll come to fetch you. Where are you taking me to? You will see. So they take him out of the plane. They open the bonnet of the plane. Which one is your suitcase? I said, I have no suitcase. I only carry in this bag. What do you mean? You don't trust us? I said, I don't trust the enemy. That was the level of detention. So they take me behind the airport to stamp my passport to a place I did not know, but I found Zuma and Maduna there. So we started to negotiate in secret. We're not allowed to see our families. We just told, you'll meet the intelligence people, you'll meet the police people, you'll meet the government people, until you can agree on an agenda. We argued on an agenda for 2 weeks. Why? because the government wanted to discuss the issue of armed struggle first. We said, no, it's not even on the agenda. It will only be on the agenda when you remove the police from the township, you release all political prisoners, you allow all exiles to come home. If you do that, you stop the hanging of activists. If you do that, then we can discuss the armed struggle. But the armed struggle was our last card to play in terms of psychologically, when we were the small army, but it was a psychological card to play. So we insisted on that. At the end, it was only us as a national party. Like I said earlier on, we said, guys, we're not the only players here. There are all sorts of players in those homelands, the former homelands. The country was balkanized. Let them come here. Let everybody, big and small, come here so we can sit around the table and talk. We call that process the Congress for a Democratic South Africa, CODESA. It took 4 years, Premier. 4 years of talking through the night. There were these tablets you drink to keep you awake. You find packets of them at the conference. We had to keep awake, stay awake in different working groups until we agreed on an interim constitution. One of the biggest arguments was, who writes the final constitution? We said, you need to use an interim constitution to elect the first parliamentarians, and then they, because they will have been elected, must write the final constitution. It was a big issue. The talks broke off. We walked away, all of us. We went all over until we negotiated away from that. Again, Mr. Roof Mayor led his team, and Cyril Ramaphosa, our current president, led his team. We agreed what are the obstacles, we resolved them, we came back, we wrote the interim constitution, and then we wrote the final constitution in the Constitutional Assembly. There were these dramatic elections, which I talked about, and then the new South Africa was born. From a past of conflict was born a future of peace and stability. A new constitution would never existed. So that's what happened. Our constitution was born from conflict, not from peace. But peace, Mandela said, let us impose peace on violence. Another lesson. Impose peace on violence. That's what we all did. You want some more?
Thank you very much. I think that's an interesting foundation and into the discussion. When you left the country in '85, fleeing into exile, you left South Africa, which was not only divided racially, but also ethnically. You just mentioned the homelands. Then you were brought back to be part of the people who started negotiations. As negotiators, yourselves as the ANC and National Party, what kind of South Africa, as you are negotiating, did you envision?
We wanted a united, non-racial South Africa, which looks at a nation not from a basis of race or color, right? A united, so that everyone is included in this new South Africa. Black and white, people of all religion, of all persuasions in life, they must be included in this new South Africa. And I think we achieved that. Our constitution is against all forms of discrimination. We have to enforce the rights of women, right? Because even today, it's not a perfect situation. If you take the corporate space in South Africa, the women are still marginalized in corporate space. So it's another struggle that must happen. You know, young people need to come forward and play leadership roles. We wanted a country with a better life for all of us. The first sentence of our constitution talks about a better life for all. That was our objective. Did you achieve it? You heard what I said in my speech. To some extent, yes. To a certain extent, no. We haven't achieved it. That's an honest balance sheet, which we have read today, you know. So, a better life for all. It's a struggle that we must fight for today in South Africa. We're not there yet.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Doc. One of the issues that during the apartheid years, black South Africans in general, were fighting for its economic participation and development. 1994 achieved political independence. Can you say something about economic development in terms of the expectations around the country? Have we, as South Africa, achieved that?
In 1990, when the process started in South Africa of negotiations, the sanctions were still on against apartheid government. And one of the things we had to remove was these sanctions. But the sanctions were hurting the economy of the country. Then, of course, the sanctions were removed. Then the new players came on stage, and the economy began to be more acceptable to the international community. We got new investment, not to the extent that we want. The economy began to show signs of growth, not to the extent which we want, but we had a high level of unemployment. And now, where we are now, our unemployment is between 39 and 41. It's very high. It's a big chunk of the population which is not employed. And then, Doc, if you allow me, I'll overlap to other issues. Because if you see this movement, xenophobic movement in the country, and it's not me speaking, it's one of our ministers who's in charge of trying to manage the situation. I said, I'm going to Dakar. I'm going to be asked a question. How do you see the causes of this xenophobic behavior as a government? And she said, Mama, look, we must take responsibility. But we have not delivered services to the poor. There is still high unemployment. There's crime. There's corruption. And our own people are angry with the government. But their anger is misplaced against people from other countries. The South African government takes responsibility for the mess that's there. That the people who are busy using violence against people who are not from South Africa, of course, have no right to take the law in their own hands. We don't agree to that, and our police force and the army were placed to deal with that violence. But the fact of the matter is, our government is the indirect cause, if not direct cause, of the instability at the moment. And the government agrees that that is the position, that the government must address the grievances of the people so that we don't fight amongst ourselves or fight people who are coming from outside. Of course, it's not correct to enter another country without papers or visas. It's wrong. I mean, as Africans, we must agree that everybody must behave not like a criminal, but in a legal and professional way. I must enter your country with a visa. I was asked to do a yellow fever certificate to come to your country. And I complied. I was asked to have a visa. I complied. Everybody must do the same thing. They must not come with a green border. But how is it possible that so many people can cross South Africa's green border? Which means our borders are porous. And therefore, it's the fault of the government again that our borders are porous. And she admitted that. It's not me. She admitted that our borders are porous, we must fix that. There's a level of unemployment is high, we must fix that. The economy is not growing, we must fix that. So our South African government has got a lot to do to stabilize the country. We can't say, oh, is that guy who crossed the border who's causing unemployment? We can't say so. It's not that guy who crossed the border who caused you to be corrupt. You are corrupt, the people are angry with you. You must take responsibility that you are corrupt. You must stop being corrupt. Stop allowing crime. The police force must be on the beat and fight crime. So let's not blame others, who must take responsibility. I was happy with the minister's explanation because it says the government admits guilt and it's going to do something about it. The question is, let us pray that our government will do something about it, the chaos around corruption, around crime, about potholes, about the lack of electricity, and all the issues people are complaining about. So I'm extending your question in an elastic manner because it allows for that, to confront the issue of why this xenophobic activities in our country.
Thank you. Just to make a follow-up on that issue, Doc. It's issue of xenophobic attacks and attacks against illegal immigrants, which is very topical, not only in South Africa, but in other places as well. But what I want to maybe ask you to elaborate on is, how do you then, after negotiating a peaceful settlement, how do you then today, I know that you've been talking a lot about this, talk to the anger that we observe in South Africa? People are angry, just mentioned those words, that people are angry against the government. How can the government try to deal with that? What is it that needs to be done? Having raised people's expectations. I mean, I remember 1994, it was like everything has come to a stop. You know, people were expecting a lot from the ANC government coming into power. But today, things have changed. How do we deal with that change?
You're asking the wrong man, because I've got very radical ideas about it. I think we must attend to our institutions again. We need constitutional reforms on how you elect a president, how you elect members of parliament. It's not in our constitution, I think so. And radically cut the government to smaller size rather than spend so much money on the government, because it's unnecessary to have all these blue lights all over the show. That is from the top to bottom. Bring more professionals in government. You know, you mustn't be a minister because you're a member of the NC or the DA. You must be a minister because you are competent. Merit must become the measure from now onward. Unless we bring merit as the measure, you'll always find this massive, the Auditor General's report, which are showing theft in government and inefficiency. The whole province, 80% is service delivery is low in the Free State. Or it's not, if not 90%. So we're pathetic in terms of service delivery. We need to grow the economy, create jobs, address the concerns of people around crime and corruption, because people don't want to see those things. Make sure that's the electricity every day in our country, where it should be, right? If you grow economy, you're likely to create jobs, you know. But there's a lot of things we need to do. But we need a lean and mean government. We don't need this unwieldy government with many ministers, many deputy ministers who are just sucking the national purse. We don't need that, you know. And we need to allow young people to lead the country and not insist on staying in the office until we are on walking sticks.
I asked that question deliberately because I know that you've been vocal around such issues. If you were to cast your eyes, having gone through all these processes, 30 years from now, I mean, what kind of, first South Africa, and then later maybe we can say something about the continent, do you yearn for? What kind of future would you like to see?
This takes me back to Kwame Nkrumah, when the first African country became independent, when he outlined a vision of a united Africa. I think that's still relevant even today. It's still valid even today. But what must be united? Geographically, we are one country. I think our roads, our railway lines, our airport must talk to one another. They must talk to one another. You know, the efficiencies of our port must talk to the roads and the rails. And our roads must stop moving to Europe and must move inward to one another. The colonial roads moved to Europe. Now the roads must move into Africa. I spent a lot of time with Gaddafi. You like him, you don't like him. He had a vision which has got certain elements which I respected. He said to me, Matthew, take the Inga Dam. No African country has got money to make Inga Dam flow and generate energy for SADC. I can from Libyan funds. And he was right. He was right. But then I'm saying we have resources in the continent which we must use. And I said to him, what's your vision of Africa? He said, one Africa, united, economy integrated, working together, no nonsense of visas and all these things. We are one. We respect the Lusaka Manifesto about the boundaries to avoid this flood of aimless crossings. But we need to work together as Africans. We need to agree. Africa can produce food for itself. It does not need to import a grain anywhere in the world. We've got a beautiful land, beautiful rainfall. But the summer seasons are not at the same time. So we can agree this part of Africa can produce this. This part of Africa can produce these minerals. Where is the mining experience in this continent? You know, where is the engineering experience which we need? We're not talking to one another. We're talking to ourselves and to our colonial masters. I think that should stop. We should first talk to ourselves and strengthen our economies and grow jobs in the continent. There's a lot of things to be done by Africa. And like everyone said this morning, Africa, there's hope for you. There's hope for the African unity which Kwame Nkrumah dreamt about. Thabo Mbeki talked about the African Renaissance. There was a lot of merit in that. But you know, it created other debates. I can see a lot of debate. But I thought Kwame Nkrumah had anchored it correctly. But in terms of economic practicalities, Gaddafi had it right. He had it right, you know. When I say he was like an uncle, people say, oh, you're so close to him. I was close to him. But for me, it made sense in terms of what he was talking, in terms of what is the vision for Africa. The AU, Dr. Moloi, needs to have teeth. It must develop teeth. It must be relevant to our economies of our continent. It must be relevant to our lives as a continent. It can't be an AU as a talking shop. I am very sorry. That's my view, that at the moment it's a talk shop. It must have teeth, you know, and bite. You know, it must insist on democracy and stability in each country. We can't have rogue government moving around. We must agree, this is democracy, this is what it produces. At the moment, everybody just does what they want. And then we're fighting amongst ourselves. We're very good at fighting amongst ourselves rather than fighting the enemy. So we should start working together and building our economies. If our economies work well and work together, I think those are the first steps.
Thank you very much. I will open a round of questions. I think we've got a bit of time. If I saw a hand, and another one, 2, 3, 4, and then if still more questions, comments, we'll do that.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Posa, and thank you for the conversation. I have only one question. I would like to know why the mention of Ubuntu was dropped from the final version of the South African Constitution from 1994. In the interim, it was mentioned, but in the final version, 1996, as we know it today, it was not mentioned. My question is, why? Thanks.
Thank you much. Congratulations. I have one specific question. I was the High Commissioner of Senegal Development Basin Organization, OMBS, here in Senegal. We had a dam, hydro dam, that belongs to Senegal, Mali, Mauritania, producing 200 megawatts of electricity. We had agreed that the management contract, maintenance contract of that dam should be accorded to ESCOM, South Africa. We spent some few years with great difficulty with ESCOM. And then we tried to replace ESCOM by Western companies. I opposed to it. I said, no, either ESCOM will do it or we'll do it by ourselves. Then we went to South Africa. I know he was in charge of public enterprise. Sorry, say it again. No, he was relatively young. Anyway, we negotiated a lot. He finally told me, look, ESCOM is having a problem. We cannot even deliver our internal need, not to talk about extending support to abroad. I was a little bit disappointed. Then finally, we had to terminate the contract with ESCOM and set up our own management company here. Of course, with the support of ESCOM. My question is, and since I've been dragging on for very long, why South Africa not still have an electricity company capable of producing, transporting, and distributing, so that it can be really the main driver of economic development of South Africa? Because I'm always hearing that a lot of shortage of electricity production in South Africa. It's very worrying me today. This is part of unemployment. That's the key. I think we should stress that element. Thank you.
Bonjour à tout le monde. Je suis très ravie de ces exposés, de ces présentations qu'on a eues tout à l'heure, spécialement Dr Fosa, pour qui j'ai beaucoup d'estime par rapport à ce qu'il vient de dire sur son passage. Seulement, j'ai une question qui est liée beaucoup plus à ce qu'il a vécu. Parce que il m'a semblé que par rapport à l'histoire de Mandela, ce que nous pouvons retenir, c'est qu'il y a eu une période où il a été combattant, une période où il a fallu faire ce passage-là et aller vers ce leader qui a su influencer de manière spectaculaire, non pas l'Afrique, mais même le monde. Et qui connaît la mentalité qu'il faut pour un combattant et la mentalité qu'il faut pour influencer, il y a une différence. Maintenant, j'aimerais savoir comment est-ce que vous avez pu passer d'un leader combattant vers un leader qui a su influencer le monde entier. Comment vous vous êtes pris pour avoir ce résultat, aussi bien dans le combat que dans l'influence mondiale? Je vous remercie.
You did say you want to ask questions. Yes, I can see your questions are around Ubuntu. Ubuntu is very, very important, but it's contained in our current constitution. If you look at we took the almost United Nations Human Rights Charter, right? And imposed them in a slightly different way in our constitution. So our constitution is based on not only the rule of law and other things, but also on human rights. Ubuntu encompasses those human rights. That's why we didn't specifically put it in words, but it is in words in the many listed rights. It's there in our constitution. It's actually more elaborated in our constitution and stated, you know. So we have not dropped it. It's part of that constitution. Whether we leave it or not is something else, which we're talking about, you know. It cannot be Ubuntu if I have no water in my home, you know. So that's practicalities. And the issue of ESCOM, the Prime Minister is raising a very important issue. I'm one of the fanatics of energy. You know, believe that if without energy, there's no economic growth. There's nothing. Forget about it. There's no new job can be created. Eskom has been very erratic in the past many years. They have turned the corner, but not the way we would want it to. There's no longer the load shedding, as we call it, electrical cuts, like they were 2 years ago. They've improved, but not as efficient as we would want it to be efficient. And you are right, Eskom can play a big role beyond our boundaries. They can. They have it within them, but they must be more efficient. And I was saying to the CEO of Eskom, you're sleeping. You know, you are sleeping behind the wheel. They're not like an oil machine. They're like a rusted machine. But somehow they manage to get the lights on, but it's not satisfactory. We always live in fear that tomorrow the lights will be off. And we should not be on edge as a nation. We should believe the lights will be on all the time. And Eskom should play a role in the continent, given the experience which has been built over the years. But not in a colonial way, in a way of supporting other economies, like I said earlier on, working together with other entities in the continent. That's what it should do, you know, work together. I mean, I'm involved in, even if I must say it, in a massive energy project in SADC, where we build dams for hydropower in 8 SADC countries. I know how it works. You know, the private sector in South Africa is going to run ahead of Eskom by far, using water, hydropower. So that's where the future is. And that includes Inga 3. Yeah, I could say that to you. Because the Congolese government has approached us and say, are you prepared to use the same technology, building dams and hydropower? And I think it will happen, but from the private sector, not from Eskom. I mean, if you take the company that built the Soto Highland scheme, which supplies Joburg 60% of its water, it's our company. Trans-Africa Water Alliance, it is our company, so it's private sector. You know, it surpasses Eskom, but Eskom has got the responsibility to do what you expect it to do, and I'm very disappointed they could not help you. I apologize on their behalf. It doesn't give you any solution, but that's wrong for Eskom to continue not to play a role in the region. Right now, they're making Swaziland pay 2 billion rand a year for electricity. But before Eskom wakes up, Swaziland is building dams. They will soon be able to produce their own hydropower and actually sell South Africa. They will do that. Why would they not do that? Why must they give us 2 billion when they can sell it to us for more than 2 billion? So while we're sleeping, others are moving forward. So we need to wake up in terms of Eskom. Now, the question about how does a fighter become a peacemaker? I don't think we ever thought by waging an armed struggle that was an end in itself. The end has always been to create a democratic, non-racial South Africa. And that if we all agree on that, we will switch off our guns and then embrace peace, all of us. I will say something very interesting to you, which I said to someone 2 weeks ago. He said to me, I was a commander in the front, what happened to your weapons? I said, they are still there in Mozambique. He said, why did you leave them? I said, because I did not trust. I thought, you know, they're not serious. Maybe I will have to go back and use the weapons. But to tell the truth, I must go destroy those weapons now. But that's what happened. It was, you gave peace a chance, and peace dominated your armed mentality, which is what Mandela and Sisulu kept saying to us, impose peace on violence. We're lucky to have those firm teachers who taught us those type of things. And there's a point when people have been killed in the country, and I said, Commander, you got soldiers all over. You feel like you must give an order for them to retaliate. And they said, no, you cannot retaliate. Impose peace on violence. Until it's sucked to your head, you must forget about your arms. Yeah, it was a means for peace.
All right. Thank you. Do we still have time? Okay.
No, it's finished.
It's finished now.
Yes.
I should apologize for Mr. Mayor. He sent me a message saying, I think you will speak on my behalf. I think I've tried. Thank you.
Thank you very much.